Welcome everybody. Here we are again. Self-practice session 5, and today we're going to talk about the breath. Now I know we're having a conversation where we're also talking about the sequencing of postures, so I'll come back to that next week or the next session. And you'll find that we start pulling different threads of the conversation of self-practice. So today I want to talk about the breath. And I suppose I'll start by telling a little story about I'll tell you two stories. There's one of how I came to the breath as a child, but then the second one was how I came to the breath again when I started to do postures. So maybe I'll tell the first one in the sense of when I started doing practice in my 20s, and I wanted to begin to integrate the breath in. So I had a great experience of breath awareness and a lot of the advanced practice from early in my childhood. But then when I tried to then engage with it in my practice at the start, it was difficult. I struggled. I was doing a lot of flow, and I was flowing in my practice, and I was loving it. Obviously, I was breathing. But to bring in real breath awareness is I really had to slow everything down, and I had to try and find that subtle experience while I was moving through my flow practice, and I found that quite frustrating. Because it limited what I was used to doing, and when I tried to bring the breath into it, it kept pulling me back, and I think that's one of the difficulties with a lot of people trying to layer breath awareness and breath practice into their actual yoga practice, is that it restricts us to really become aware of the breath. We have to naturally slow things down. We got to move at a more gentle and steadier pace. We got to bring in those micro movements that allow us to experience our breath, to experience the flow and the sensations in the breath, and not have the intensity of our physical practice take over. So I want to acknowledge that, because that may be a challenge for some of you in your self-practice, is how to bring that breath awareness into your practice. It will mean doing a bit of breath awareness just in itself, and then as you bring it into your practice, is then beginning to do breath awareness in your practice. It means that you're going to have to sort of ease back a little bit. So now we talked before about spinning plates, is that you have different things that you begin to develop in your practice. So how you would do it is, and I'll take you through it at the end of the session, I'll take you through a little bit of breath awareness. So at the end of your session or the start of your session is you do a little bit of breath awareness just to become aware of your breath. As you settle into it and you begin to center yourself, then you bring breath awareness into your center. So you don't do it all at once. You'd layer it in. So you do a little bit, and then you do your normal practice. And then you bring a little bit of breath awareness into your next session, you center, and then you bring a bit more breath awareness into your limbering, because you're not too intense in your practice yet. You're opening out the muscles, you're opening out the joints. Now you can begin to open out your breath awareness, and you can begin to sync up your breathing and your movements. And very simply, this is an exhale, this is an inhale. This is an exhale, and this is an inhale. So every movement in your body has a reference of breath. And the more you get used to that, is you can begin to sync up both together. And it's easier done in the limbering before you start to do the strengthening. Yeah. So, and then again, another session is you bring a bit more breath awareness in. You start to get a grounding. You start to center your breath awareness in your limbering. So now you can limber and breathe at the same time, and you're layering it in. And you know where I'm going. Incrementally, then is you can begin to bring it into your more stronger postures. So now, can you do it in the standing? Can you do it in the forward bending? Think about in the forward bending where you would have to pull back to be able to breathe the full lungs, so that it's going to make you adjust, that you're coming more into your inner alignment. You're coming more into the energy of the effort, the breath of the effort, and again, it's going to allow you to see your practice from a different position, because your breath is going to bring you more and more into your body. So now you're observing and experiencing your body more and more from the inside. Where a beginner starts on the outside, a beginner or an intermediate practice begins to move into the body. So the breath becomes elementally important. So that's one of the reasons why you would do it, is to take you further and further into your body. And you're looking to align your physical effort with your energetic effort. Is over time, you're looking to shift from physical control to energetic control. So what do I mean by that? Is you're activating your alignment, your lines of force, you're getting your muscles and your joints working together. Now you resist into the ground, you root down, that gives you that lifting sensation, it tones your muscles, gives your joints their mobility. When you get your true line of force all the way from your hand to your core, you're activating that line of force and you're really beginning to build strength in your body. So when you work your 2 legs and your 2 arms all the way into your spine, now you've got 5 lines of force, 2 arms, 2 legs, and then the 5th line of force is your spine itself. You're activating your lines of force. It's drawing you deeper and deeper into the physicalness and the power of your body. But you want to begin to move in as well. So you got to move into that spontaneity in the body. Think about your center of gravity. You're feeling the tone, you're feeling the release. So even in your lines of force, you're still in that tone and release. You're still in the natural engagement of the body. It's going to draw your awareness more and more into your core, into your navel. And as you shift into breathing and breathing the pause at the end of your exhale, you begin to activate your core. And you're beginning to work then from the inside out. So your line of force, your stability class is working your line of force all the way in, where as you shift to your core class, you're beginning to work from your core all the way back out. And you want to shift from physical effort to energetic effort. So the longer you hold the posture, the less effort you're putting in, you're rooting down even more. You're getting that subtle lift coming up through. So the less effort you're putting in, the more energy you're getting in return. So your breath is elementally important to that. And you're breathing your lines of force from your core. And again, you feel your core power rising. So that's the natural pathway when you begin to work from the outside in as you're working in. So again, your breath will become more and more important as you go along. And the first thing with your breath is breath awareness. And breath awareness is far more important than any breathing technique. Far more. Why? Let me explain to you this way. Is you pay attention to your breath. You do it now. The first thing you do is you'll take an inhale. Everybody does. So you'll notice. I'll take you through the steps. You'll notice that one is your awareness of your breath. You're breathing. There's an inhale. There's an exhale, and then in between the inhale and the exhale, there's that moment of transition. There's a moment of pause where you transition the direction. So I'm inhaling, pause, and now I'm exhaling. And the pause is like a pendulum. It's part of the flow state. So it pauses to change direction, as opposed to stopping and then starting, stopping and starting. The breath moves nice and fluidly in its natural state. It's constantly in that flow state. And we're in the inhaling and then the exhaling. And the moment to pause, you transition, the moment to pause, you transition. And in many ways, that's how you want to move in your body. As you go into the posture, when you reach the peak of the posture, there's that moment of pause, and then you return. And there's that moment of pause, and then you return. I'm describing a flow class, the flow state. But we want to also do it with the power of our breaths. We want to do it from our core, and then we also want to do it with our lines of force. We want to do it with our alignment. So you can see we're moving from the outside in, stability class, alignment, core class, there in the breath. And as you refine your center, you begin to flow from the inside out. So it's the flow state. So that is a big part of the breath. But you'll also notice that the breath has, each inhale and exhale even the pauses, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So now just your awareness is just observing that you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You're getting a sense of that. Then there's a moment of pause. And it's your ability to allow your awareness to flow with those different stages and just recognizing them. This is all about just breath awareness. I'm not talking about a technique where you do this and you do that. You're just observing the process of the breath itself, the steps it goes through. And then the more you observe that, this is how I figured it out, by the way, is the more you observe that, is you'll begin to notice that If you slow down, it amplifies. So if you slow your breathing down a little bit without stopping it, without getting in the way of it, is you'll realize that it actually amplifies your awareness of it. You become more sensitive to the subtle nuances. So that flow is like you begin to glide. So you're gliding into the beginning of your inhale. And then you'll notice that you find yourself breathing into your lower lungs. So there's a greater sense of space there. So lower lungs will inflate, press down on the diaphragm will push down on the internal lower ones, and then the trunk of the body expands to facilitate that space. So at the beginning of each inhale, exhale, and the pauses, and we'll talk about that in a little while, and the pauses, you'll notice that there's a greater sense of spaciousness. You'll feel the spaciousness of it. Even on the exhale, you're exhaling from your lower lungs, so you're exhaling through that spaciousness of your lower lungs and your trunk. So now you notice there's that's a space. And then through the middle of your breath is you're now breathing through the rib cage, so everything narrows in a little bit, and there's the intercostal muscles, a lot of ligament and bone. So now you're channeling your breath, so you feel that space becomes narrower, and you get that sense of flow. It's like a momentum through it. Even on the exhale and the inhale, you get that sense of flow, a sense of fluidity, and there's a momentum to it. Does that make sense? So you're going from spaciousness to a flowing spaciousness. And then at the end of the inhale or the end of the exhale, you're breathing to your upper lungs, up towards just underneath the collarbones, and your lungs are really small there. So they need to take time to engage and release. You can't breathe fast, or you'll get free. You'll breathe really tight up into them. So you got to slow the breathing down a little bit more, just a little bit, so that you can feel the peaceful completion of your inhale or your exhale. It'll be the same in the pause. You're coming to the peaceful completion of the pause, and the breath begins to move again. So now you'll notice that you've got this spaciousness, and then it's a flowing spaciousness that comes to a peaceful completion. And then there's this pause at either end. There's this moment where you're neither inhaling or exhaling. And then in that moment, the pause, it's actually very calm. There's lovely calmness to it. If you want to find your energetic center, is breathe the breath I'm talking about, follow that breath down to the pause at the end of your exhale, and you're energetically centering yourself. Like when you physically center through your body into the earth, your energetic center is the pause at the end of the exhale. So you know sometimes when people are stressed, somebody trying to help them is getting them to breathe, getting them to slow the breath down, even in pregnancy, and coming to that pause at the end of the exhale. That's where the biggest release is, and that's that energetic center. Also connects you to your life force. You get a little sense of your prana. Now, what do we mean by that? You'll notice, that you've got this movement of your breath on the inhale and the exhale, and that there's pauses at the end of it. And at the beginning of the breath, it's an open space, and then there's a fluid space, like a channel. You're breathing a channel. Does that make sense? So here's space, here's the flowing space of the channel, and you come to the peaceful completion. So here's the other end of the channel, still open. So literally you're breathing a channel. So now think about this, is you're doing it on the inhale and the exhale, and you're becoming aware that at one point you'll come to the pause at the end of your exhale. And as you come into the pause, you'll notice that you still feel that sense of spaciousness. Then you'll notice you'll still feel that slowing motion or flowing motion. And as you come to the end of the pause, there's a peaceful completion, and you begin to inhale. The body kicks in, you begin to breathe. Now the question is that what was that? What was that sensation? You felt all that movement, but it wasn't the breath because you weren't inhaling or exhaling. And what you're tapping into there is your life force. You're tapping into prana itself. And you can feel that motion of prana within you. And that's your energetic body. So when you tap into that beautiful pause at the end of your exhale, you're centering yourself energetically. So if you think about then on an emotional level, is the first thing we always feel is life itself. And there's that feeling of aliveness. That's the baseline of our experience. Our life force, and then everything else. The first thing we feel is our life force, and then we feel all of life after that. So now we start feeling all these sensations, and we begin to identify them as emotions and patterns of thoughts. Is if we struggle with them, if we begin to struggle with what we're feeling emotionally, that emoting, the pushing and pulling, it's the struggle with what we're feeling. So now if we took the fight out of it and just allowed ourselves to feel, is we will come back into that energetic center. We're finding our center, and then we're moving with the ebbs and flows of the emotional sensations, but without the fight. So now we're just in a state of feeling. A simple example is, always use the simple ones, is happiness and sadness as a simple explanation, yeah? And pick any emotion and go to the opposite, and it's the same variables, yeah? We can be happy and grasping at it. So we're emotionally happy, we're trying to hold on to it. And in that, there's the struggle. So we don't allow ourselves to feel the happiness for its natural state, just to be in the feeling of it. We're in the emotion of it. Same to sadness. Is we feel the sadness, then we're trying to push the sadness away, we're fighting with it. Is rather than just allowing ourselves to feel the sadness. When we allow ourselves to be authentically in both, it's because we've taken the struggle out of it, and we're just allowing ourselves to go through the process of our humanity and our life's experience. So sometimes we're happy and sometimes we're sad, and it's part of our experience. And feeling the authenticity of it lifts us and makes us more rather than less. But if we fight with them, is then we're in the struggle of it, and then that can deplete us. Is we get more tired in the struggle of it rather than allowing the authentic feeling to lift us, whether it is a pleasant one or an unpleasant one, if that makes sense. So now think about your self-practice. You're coming in of a day, and sometimes you're going to break out and do a big pumping physical session. Other days you might be a bit emotional. You know, there could be just stuff going on. It's all a bit intense, and you know, a bit of energetic grounding will be the perfect thing for you. That's exactly what I need. I just need to come back to feeling and come back to myself and just be in that. So you might find on that day is that the more you start tapping into your breath and then into your life force and that beautiful feeling within it, is that now you find yourself doing sessions where you're just in that connection. You're just in the breathing of your body, the breathing of the movements, staying away from the being too physical, so that you can just stay in the breath and the breath connection. And it just gives you that lovely sense of calmness, and it grounds you. And in that, it slows the brain down, it slows the mind down, and it just brings you back to a nice simple awareness. And then you're in the balance of yourself again. So some days that might be the type of practice that brings you back to balance, that brings you back to your center, that allows you to figure out what you need to figure out in the way you need to figure it out. Remember what I said before. What would happen if you gave your body all the space it needed to figure itself out, to release all its knots, aches and pains, that the body can just come back to that beautiful connection in itself. And then that's where you're moving and living in your body from. Now, at an emotional and mental level, it's the same thing. Giving yourself the space to feel what you need to feel emotionally. Mentally, giving yourself the space to think about what you need to think about so that you can figure your thoughts out, that you can undo the knots in your emotional states, that you can just come back to, what am I authentically feeling here? And then just give yourself the space to feel that and go through that experience and whatever that means to you, rather than the struggle of it. So the breath is elementally important for that. Does that make sense? It's really important. Now, notice I haven't talked about one breathing technique, and the reason being is you have breathing techniques and then you have energetic practice. You have the real energetic practice, and then there's the techniques. It's a bit like you can do the posture, or you can do a posture within the alignment of your body. So working with the alignment of your body, now you're really coming into the power of your practice, and you're using the postures to support and have fun with it and develop that. Where if you just do the postures without alignment, well, then it's just making shapes, so to speak. You know, it's not bringing you into a greater clarity of being in your own body. There's a difference. So the breathing techniques are the same. We can get caught up in the techniques, you know, and if you don't have a baseline of breath awareness, and you don't have a baseline of the qualities of the breath that are just natural, then the breathing techniques will dominate and take over. where if you come into breath awareness and you just allow yourself to be in that beautiful spaciousness of it and begin to recognize all the qualities of the natural breath, they will naturally take you into every breathing technique. What do I mean by that? Well, you'll notice that after a while that you're breathing into your lower lungs, and there's 3 phases to the breath. So there's abdominal breathing. Then the second phase is rib cage, breathing the rib cage. Third phase is clavicle breathing. You're breathing right up to the collarbones. They're the three different phases. Now, the more you feel that naturally, those 3 phases, just your awareness opens up to them. You feel the space of them, you feel the engagement of them, and you feel the rightness of it. So now it's not a technique you're practicing, it's an experience you're having. And you're bringing that quality of awareness and alignment of breath into your alignment in your body. That's where you're aligning body and breath together, physical and energetic effort. You're aligning them together, and you're doing it with awareness. Those 3 phases together become the full yogic breath. So you find yourself breathing the full yogic breath, but you're actually in the experience of it rather than the technique of it. Because the technique can be, we can get caught up in it. We can try to get the technique right rather than just feeling the naturalness of the breath and then moving with that. So we find ourselves opening up into the fullness of it. So the full yogic breath. Now, if we activate our nasal passage, we open up our nasal passage, engage our throat lock here in our throat, our epiglottis, is we'll find ourselves then moving into the Ujjayi breath, the victorious breath. And again, that's a very natural breath as well. If you think about your second wind, let's say you're out for a run or something, or you're doing something that's very physical, is you'll be breathing through your nose and eventually just breathing normally through a nose is not enough, and we feel like we're running out of steam, and then we stop the resistance, the body drops into a different space, and what's happened is that the airways open, the epiglottis channels open, and we get to breathe the full power of the lungs. And that's the Ujjayi breath. It's very natural. So the more you understand that, you can allow the naturalness of that to kick in. So now you're breathing the Ujjayi breath, but it's actually a very spontaneous engagement of it. You're in the experience of it rather than the technique of it. And again, it's the subtlety of that breath, which is where its real power is, not the harshness of it. And what I mean by that, if I'm doing a strong practice, strong in my body, is if I tighten and brace into that, it's a fight. I'm actually wearing myself out. If I soften into my muscles, as my muscles tone, if I soften into it, I'm actually softening into the strength of my muscle. I'm softening into the power of the muscle. So it's the ability to be soft with my strength is where real empowerment comes in. It's not a power struggle. It's not a battle where there has to be power and disempowerment. There's empowerment. So I'm empowering my muscles by softening into the tone. It allows me to reach the full limit of my muscle and still be open and engaged in it. Now think about your breath. Is you start to breathe into that tone and you use your breath to soften and have your prana move nice and fluidly through that muscle. And you're getting the channels of your body open. So lines of force, but then you also have energetic lines of force. And you're looking to open up the central channel. And again, the Ujjayi breath is a very natural breath, as opposed to, again, technique. You get the idea, yeah. So now we can be engaging single nostril breathing. So when you bring in the single nostril breathing, is you'll notice that there's one nostril always a little bit more open than another. So when you practice going from one nostril to another, what's happening is you're figuring out when that nasal passage is closed, you're figuring out how to consciously open it. So that as you do your practice, is you're bringing both energies, both sides of your nostrils to balance. Yeah. So that when you start to go from left to right in alternate nostril breathing, is initially you feel one nostril more open and another nostril more closed, and it balances out the 3 tendencies, the 3 energies: the positive, the negative, and the neutral. A nice simple way to describe that is the nostril. Let's say you're going to do alternate nostril breathing for 10 minutes a day for a year, okay? So let's say that on a given day, you're going to have one nostril more open and another nostril more closed, and you're going to balance them out. So think about the positive and negative, the opposites, yeah? So the nostril that's more open is it will it's easier to breathe through, more enjoyable. Where the nostril is more restricted, it's restrictive. It can be more frustrating. It can trigger a more negative response. So now, depending on the mood you're in, the state of mind you're in, is that sometimes the alternate nostril breathing, you're calmer, and other times there can be a real battle going on because you're moving from an openness to a restrictive space, from the positive to the negative. And in that, the more you do that, you begin to recognize the different subtle patterns of energy that are moving through you, the different subtle states of mind that you're moving through. So the more you do alternate nostril breathing and balance the energies out, is you begin to balance out the positive and negative energy within us. And doing that from our center. So again, now you're opening up your central channel by balancing out the positive and negative, which means treating them both equally. So that you give, as you breathe into your inhale, you find that beautiful spaciousness. You breathe that spaciousness on the nostril that's open. You breathe that spaciousness on the nostril that's a bit more restrictive. You breathe that spaciousness whether you're feeling happy or whether you're feeling sad. Whether it's a positive thought or a negative thought, you're still offering that same spaciousness. And then you're still offering that same sense of momentum, a sense of flow. And as you flow through it, you come to a peaceful completion. Now that breath awareness that I described at the start is exactly the same in alternate nostril breathing. If you take breathing out of it, it's mindfulness. Is you allow a thought to come in, so you gotta let it in, you gotta hold the space to let it in with awareness. Is you want to give the thought space to express itself, so you gotta give it space, and then you want the thought to fully express itself. Is let it fully express itself is the only way you'll ever learn what's going on in your mind if you actually allow your thoughts to fully express themselves. And when that thought is ready to leave, is let it go peacefully. And again, there's the rotation of it. It will come back in again, and it'll tell a little bit more of its story. You'll begin to understand more of what's going on in yourself. You'll start to see your hurt story, but you can see it and feel it. Begin to understand the reasonings why. So rather than getting caught up in the struggle of it, is you begin to feel the hurt of it. Rather than getting caught up in the hurt of it, you begin to learn what you need to learn to let go of the hurt and step into that connection again. Who's that self that you're releasing in that? And you're stepping into that consciously. You're coming into that authenticity of it, the truth of your experience in that. And that's you, again, clearing out the physical channels, clearing out the energetic emotional channels, clearing out the thoughts and the mental channels, so that you're bringing yourself all into the one place. So now you can see the real value of the breath. It's very, very powerful. And breath awareness is the most powerful breath that you can learn, because it establishes every other technique, which is really just a quality of the same breath. So rather than trying to control the breath, it's just observe it. That's the wonderful thing about the simplicity of it. You're not actually trying to change the breath. All you got to do is let yourself follow the experience of it, and then start to notice all these different qualities that come from it. And then as you feel them in your body, in your sway, look, you're in your center of gravity. That's the same sway there. That same flow is the same flow as your breath. That space that you feel in your body is the same space you're breathing into. That momentum that you feel is the same momentum, same force moving through you, your life force moving through you. Is when you come to that peaceful completion, it's your willingness to be soft all the way from the beginning, all the way through to the very end. And the balance of the muscle, its ability to tone and its ability to release. So when you find yourself in the natural sway of your body, and then when you begin to breathe at the same pace as your natural sway, your center of gravity, you find that they start to sync up. They start to move in that same beautiful pendulum effect, and you're naturally syncing up your body and your breath. I guess very, very powerful. Now, there's other breathing techniques that I could talk through. There's Kapalabhati and lots of pausing and lengthening at the breath. I won't go into that now, because you get the idea of what I'm saying. And that's all I want you to get. Remember, these self-practice sessions are about talking about this, about getting your head around the breath, and why would I start, and why do I need to start, and what's the value of it, and where do I get my inroad into it, and how does it fit in with my postures, where does it fit in my yoga practice, if I'm going to work out more of an emotional, more subtle level of myself, how does the breath fit in? So that's the conversation we're having. Along the way, is, as people engage more, is firing questions. Put comments in. If you've got a question, put it in the comment section, and I'll have a look at it, and then I'll bring it back up and we'll talk about that. So the more and more these sessions go on, is we'll start talking about the real experiences people are having, and we'll flesh out that 100 different ways. Okay, but for now, is breath awareness. So now think about this, is let's talk a little bit more about the profoundness of the breath awareness, yeah? Is imagine you're a sentient being that just come into existence, and you come in with sentience itself, with awareness. Is the first thing you'd realize is I. And the reason why is, let's say you have universal consciousness, and universal consciousness is omnipresent. It's everywhere at once, but not in one place. It's universal consciousness. So now when we localize consciousness in one place, that's when I appears. So you've got this universal consciousness, like an omnipresence. And when we come into the being within ourselves, that awareness of being, we drop back into that beautiful omnipresent state where we let go of the I and we merge into universal consciousness. And again, you'll hear me talk about that in lots of other practices, yeah? And it's not such a difficult thing to do. It's just a refinement of a quality of awareness and how to attune to it. And there's other bunch of videos around that you'll hear me talking about that, yeah. But for now is when we come into the moment, when we come into existence and we localize consciousness, is the first thing you say is I. So I, and then it'll be I am. So now I am. I has come into existence, so it's I am. And then I realize I am present. Is I'm not just I am, I'm here right now. And then the next thing after that is I am present, I am alive. So I'll feel that I'll experience my life force. And how I'll do that is in my first breath. So consciousness comes in, and then the first breath is I am alive. I am present, I am alive. Does that make sense? If we come in with full sentience, that will be the basic process of it. So now think about coming into that aliveness, coming into that life force, and then just feeling that life force all the time would be centering our awareness in our breath. And then just going about our lives in that quality of the natural breath. Is we constantly be in the present moment and in the living moment itself. So think about this, is we're in the moment, but then there's the living moment, there's the engagement of that living moment. And it's our ability to stay in that. So the breath is that important. The natural breath is the most important. All the other breathing techniques will come from that. Okay, so it's super important. It'll also accelerate you in the subtle experience. And think about this, is when we get used to moving in micro movements, and we begin to breathe in micro movements, what happens is that it starts to open up and take you into the layers of your muscles. As you're swaying in your center of gravity and you feel the muscles, you feel yourself going in deeper. When you begin to breathe into that, you'll start to feel the energy move through those deeper layers of your muscles. It's very much part of your embodiment. You're coming into the embodiment of yourself. It's no different than as you move with the waves of sensation at an energetic level, you notice that those waves also express themselves at a mental level. That the more you're able to come into the patterns of motion in your mind, literally you're breathing them. And that as you breathe at that same pace, you'll start to notice all your thoughts begin to slow down and move at the same pace. And that is your natural center of gravity. So as your thoughts begin to slow down and calm down, you'll start to notice that you have a thought, like the breath, there's a moment to pause. So at the end of each breath, there's a moment to pause. At the end of each thought, there's a moment to pause. And in that space of the pause, there isn't a thought anymore, there's just awareness itself. So now your awareness comes to the fore. There's the watcher, there's the listener, there's the feeler, there's consciousness itself comes to the fore. And the more you center yourself in your consciousness of being, is now you're observing from your center, your mental center. And there's a beautiful sensation of just being that natural consciousness, naturally in that state. There's beautiful qualities in that. And they're very similar to the qualities of the breath. There's a wonderful spaciousness. There's a beautiful natural sense of momentum, and there's a lovely softness to it. Let me ask you a question. what is the most gentlest, lightest touch that has the biggest effect? What is the most gentlest of touches that has the biggest effect? So think about this. Here's my hand. I move my hand around like this. Is big movement from the tips of my fingers. But the movement's less in my wrist. You look at my elbow, it's less. Look at my ball and socket joint, it's less. You bring it all the way into the spine, it's even more subtle movement. Now bring it into my breath. Now this movement that's all the way out here is even more subtle than my breath. Now bring it into my mind, it's even more subtle. And you bring it right through the thoughts, all the way to the very center of my awareness, is then the most subtlest of efforts is intention. It's not even an effort, it's an intention, it's holding the intention. And that as I hold that intention, is then there's the action. And it's the clear flow from intention through action, and then exercising it, is actualizing it. Does that make sense? So that the gentlest of touches is the power of centering oneself in the subtlety of one's awareness. Now, how you bridge that is getting into the subtlety of one's breath. So now think about this. What's the lightest breath that you can breathe that gives you the maximum effect? Now think about this. You're strong in your postures. You're building up strength, and it's your ability to be soft in those muscles that build your full power. So think about, as you're in your body and you're building your strength, is you're breathing softly. And the softer you breathe is the deeper you're moving into your muscles. So the lightest of touch in your breath gives you the greatest of strength in your muscles, in your body, if that makes sense. And what you're doing is you're bringing that subtlety of touch all the way right through to the physicalness of your body. So now think about, as you go about your day, you're in that beautiful sway, you're in the openness of it, you're in the flow of it, you're in the softness of it, and you're also in the natural integrity of your body. And that you can feel the subtlety of that touch all the time. It's absolutely beautiful. Think about that flowing motion that you feel in your sway. Is that force? It's just like the smallest touch that has the biggest effect, because it keeps us moving. No different on an emotional, energetic level, and a mental level. Think about, we all live long lives. Now I know on one level it's a blink of an eye, okay, but another level is when you get into the micro movements and get into the subtlety of our inner world, is look at the size of my physical body. It occupies a certain physical space. Energetically, I can expand my energetic space to feel a far greater space than I do my physical body. And you get that sometimes in relaxation. You're lying down, you're relaxing, and you just drop into the energetics of the body, and then the inner body opens up. You get this wonderful spaciousness. And then sometimes you're like, this space feels enormous. And I remember having it myself the first couple of times. How can my physical body, I'm in my physical body, but how can I be experiencing such a huge space that is far greater than what my physical body, the size of my physical body? It would seem like a contradiction, until I realized that that's my energetic body, is I'm opening up my energetic body. Now go into awareness itself, and again, think about how big that space is. So now we can come along at one point and say, in time, life is a blink of an eye. Does that make sense? But in spaciousness and awareness, is life is enormous. Life can be infinite if you want to go that far in it. So life is actually profoundly as big as you choose it. Your ability to master space. So now think about the power of getting into the subtlety of your breath. Now feeling that as you go deeper and deeper into your life and the journey of your life, is you're bringing this beautiful spaciousness with you. That you've got all the space you need to figure things out. And that you've got this beautiful flow in you, that it just keeps momentum going. And it's life moving, it's life force moving, not just moving through you, but you're moving with it. And you're just going in the flow of that. And that gentlest touch just keeps you moving forward. And that everything you meet in your life that you got to figure out, that you absorb into it. Rather than smashing it down or attacking it or running away, is we find peace by connecting into it. And we learn what we need to learn. And along the way, we're going to experience pain and we're going to experience pleasure. And rather than attaching to those pleasures and pains of life and then getting trapped in that box that it creates, is that we just keep merging, we just keep breathing into. So sometimes we'll experience pain, but it's to stay in it until we free ourselves from it. We learn what we need to learn. Rather than try to escape and attack, and then the pain stays in us. we let the pain go. So what will happen if you learn how to actually let go of pain? That you went through a couple of experiences, whether you're physical or emotional or mental, where you found yourself in a hurt place and you consciously released it. So you knew how to release pain. It would allow us to be a little bit less fearful and a little bit more fearless. And fearlessness is the experience of peace. When fear is not there, the natural state is peace. So we just drop into that peacefulness. And it allows us to look deeper and go further into life. Same with the pleasures. You might be surprised that pleasures are as much a trap as pain, because we attach to them. So as soon as I attach to a pleasure and I say, I want that, well, then I'll hold on to that for dear life and I won't let it go. And then I'll struggle with it, and then I'll fight with it, and then it hurts me. And then it's like, now I'm in suffering and hurt again. So it's our ability to absorb into is feel it, feel the fullness of it. If it hurts, let it go, is find the peace in it, and then bring that with us on our journey. So as we go through life, we're coming more and more into ourselves, and then in the lives we're living is we're actualizing more and more of our outer life as well. And we're in the life force of that. We're in the living of it. Does that make sense? So the breath has everything to do with attuning to that baseline experience of life force, and then the actual experience of life around us, and feeling that connection. So that's the importance of it. I know this is getting into the philosophical part of it, but equally it is also a very practical part. There's no doubt about it that it's a tangible experience, and that the more we bring it with us, it amplifies every other experience in our lives. So how do we walk around in that heightened state of awareness with a radiance of life force? That life force is radiating through us. Remember I talked about channels earlier on? Is that the more we clear the channels in the physical body, the energetic emotional body, the mental body, the more we start to clear out all the channels, which is all the positive and negatives of our lives, and taking the struggle out of them. And then just being in the authenticity of that's our humanity. But we can be radiant in that life force. So having our life force just radiating through us, and that we're walking around with that radiant experience, that heightened experience within ourselves, that awakening of one's being, the sentience of one's living experience, is tapping into that. It's absolutely gorgeous. And the breath is a beautiful companion, a beautiful one. It's one of the ways I experience my breath. It's like a companion with me in life. So my life force is with me all the time, and I'm also in the engagement of universal life force. Is we journey together. We both tell stories. Sometimes life tells me a story. Sometimes I tell life a story. And we look for the commonality between them. And then anytime I find a commonality, I step into that. I become that thing. I breathe in that experience. That experience breathes in me. That's what it feels like. And there's just that merging connection within it. It's absolutely beautiful. Okay? And it's fascinating. So now bringing it into your self-practice is the only thing you need to do at the start is just begin to notice your breath. No control. Just notice it. Now, when you will notice that, when you get used to, the first thing you do is you'll inhale. Okay, so get past that and first time I pay attention, I take a breath in. Okay, well then let go of that. Let the breath go, but keep watching. And then you just notice, there's my inhale, there's my exhale. You may notice different pressures in it. There's a bit of space. Oh, there's a flow. Oh, look, I finished that peacefully. Oh, I'm holding my breath there. Oh, look, I'm rigid there. You're starting to notice all the different qualities in the breath. So you'll notice when it's free flowing and it's easy, and then you'll notice when it's like when you do postures, and if it gets too strong and the body braces, is that you don't need to know anything else. The body's bracing. It means that the body's not comfortable with the effort it's making. You pull back until the body can now not brace, that it's in its integral tone in some form. So now bracing in the breath is when the breath is held. That holding of the breath that's like bracing. So you can recognize that, and then the only thing you need to do in that is ease back until there's no holding of the breath. There you go. Now there's no holding the breath. Now off you go, and just observe it again. So just keep observing the breath. That's the only thing you need to do. And then you start to pull the threads of what you notice, what you're aware of. And then you start to notice the different moments of the breath, the start, the middle, and the end, and the different qualities in it. And then you're just naturally coming into breath awareness. And it doesn't matter how long this takes. It really doesn't, because once you come at it from that place, you'll have it for the rest of your life. It ends up being a companion with you. You come into your life force, and it's so natural that your breath is your companion. You feel your life force as a companion, not as a technique you're practicing. They're so different in experiences. And then within that, you just start to notice that as I explore this more in my practice, these different qualities of breath come in, which are different breathing techniques. And the technique is really simple. You do it for a year, and it will tell you its story. It has it like each technique is like a book, and the technique is just the front page of the book. But the more you do the breathing technique, it reveals its story to you. And that's the journey of that technique, is that when you come into the living experience of it. Now you can be banging your head off that wall for a long time, trying to get the techniques right and missing the story, or you can do the natural breath, let yourself come to those techniques naturally, and then you're already in the story of it, and then the techniques start to make sense to you from the point of view of your actual experience. And then you realize you're halfway through the book, and you're like, oh, there's that one, and there's that one, and there's that one. And all just starts to make sense. So you get what I'm trying to say, is just bring it in with a bit of awareness and start to spin that plate. Pay attention to it. And that's the starting point. It might seem like the tortoise on the hare again. And again, if you're following more and more of these videos, you can see how the detail that we give, the layering of the experience, the integration of it all. There's only one yoga system. There's not multiple systems. Any style in it is just pulling out an aspect of the system and amplifying it. But if you put all the styles together, it's like putting all the pieces of the jigsaw together. Okay, so part of that is breaking things down that you fundamentally understand the baseline experiences of all the practices. So to understand all the breathing techniques truly is to understand breath awareness. Okay, so now to do that, that's going to be like the tortoise rather than the hare. And what I mean is, I could start throwing out a load of breathing techniques to you. When you feel like you're racing down the road of breath awareness, when you're racing down the road of techniques, but then to move from technique to real energetic work, you actually have to find the natural breath. You have to find your life force, and then you have to engage in that as your baseline. So now the slower part is, now I'm focusing on breath awareness. I'm really bringing in that breath awareness and tapping into my life force, the prana. Okay, now I've got the prana, and it might seem a little slower at the start to get that, but again, that's the marathon. Is you're now practicing the marathon rather than the race. The hare likes to race ahead, but the tortoise will treat everything like a marathon. Now think about, once you understand this, once you get this, you'll have it for the rest of your life. So get it right, and you'll have it for the rest of your life. It'll take longer at the start, but once you get going into it, you'll begin to feel the power of it, and you're coming into the real power of it. So in truth, it's exponential. You get an exponential experience. So you'll feel a little bit, you'll feel a little bit, you'll feel a little bit. And after a while, you find yourself breathing and just feeling your life force flowing with you in all those beautiful micro moments. Now it's moving at an exponential level. A technique is not something you can walk around doing all the time. You can't walk around doing techniques all the time. You have to stop, you have to do it. And you have to stop and you have to do it. Where the natural breath is an exponential experience that just keeps going. And it's the marathon of it as opposed to the race. So understand that, the importance of that, and then the willingness to pull back at times to go, I'm going to bring this in to come layering in another level. So now sometimes it might seem like you're going all the way back to the beginners, and you're not. What you're doing is you're bringing in a beginner's mind again. So I remember doing all my postures, doing all this crazy stuff, it's great, loved it, But then I had to figure out my center more. So now I ended up having to pull all the way back to doing like baby postures. And really what I was doing is I was layering in a real clear sense of my center, which was developing my practice, but it seemed like I had to pull myself back and it's almost like I'm starting my practice again. Until I realized, no, hang on, this is beginner's mind, and I'm layering in a really important part of the practice. So while at one level I feel like I'm doing simple postures, at another level I'm bringing a ground into my practice that is fundamentally with me today. What I started back then is with me all the time. So now that becomes an advanced practice when I can exponentially keep moving in it. I'm in the living experience of it. I don't practice being centered anymore. I'm just centered. I'm in the being of it, if that makes sense. So now think about this with your breath. You got to pull back a little bit, and you're observing your breath more, while it might not let you go as strong into postures on days as you normally would. What you're doing is you're bringing in another layer of experience, and you're beginning to tread it. And the more you tread in your breath awareness, and you start to get into those beautiful spaciousness, and you get into those lovely flowing sensations and the peaceful completion, now you start to take that into your posture work. Now you find that this isn't as intense. I feel stronger, but the intensity isn't there, because I'm actually building real strength rather than in the back of my body. And then after a while, you realize that, God, my breath is beginning to lead my practice here. Is I'm leading my movements with my breath. I'm breathing into my body here. I'm breathing into this posture rather than leading with physical effort. And now you're really binding that together. You're really beginning to move from the inside out. And it's a beautiful experience. So again, that's the fun and the joy of treading them in together. So now just allowing yourself to come back to beginner's mind, to bring in a new thing, is a maturing of your practice. It's a maturing of your understanding as a yoga practitioner. You know, it's not a limitation of your abilities. It's a maturing of your understanding, your willingness to do that. It takes you in and takes you deeper into the experience. Okay, so you gotta remember that. So sometimes you're gonna feel like 2 steps back to go 1 step forward. Yes, it is. That's the way it is. That's how it works. But then it's when you bring those two together, now you're stepping into a bigger space. Okay, so keep that in mind. So let's do a little bit of breath awareness, and just because I know I did a lot of talking about it, so let's just do a little bit just so you get a sense of it. Yeah. So you can either be sitting and be comfortable, or you can lie down, whichever you want. And all I want you to do then is just let your eyes close, and then I want you to just gently scan your body and make any adjustments you feel you need to do. Okay. So now, obviously, you know the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is focus on your breath. Notice that you inhale. Okay, so then that's fine. So let your breath now move. And all I want you to notice is that your breath has an inhale and it has an exhale. Don't worry about controlling it. Don't worry about even the depth of it. And the more you observe your breath, you're going to start to notice that some breaths are deeper, others are shallow, and then some are in between. Every breath has its own natural depth. So there's no point in trying to control it or fight it. Just let it be. You're just observing it. So there's 3 basic phases to it. There's a bit of movement in the navel, the rib cage, and upper chest. You feel the intercostals work, yeah? Now, I don't want you to breathe all those 3. I just want you to notice what you notice. Some people might be big belly breathers. You might end up breathing a lot in your belly. Other people might feel very little movement in the navel. So again, it's neither right nor wrong. Just it is what it is. So if you notice that, just notice that. Intercostal muscles, how much you feel your rib cage move. Some people will really move their rib cage on the breath. Other people won't feel so much. You just notice, whatever that is. No right or wrong. Same with the upper chest. Some people who are big belly breathers, they'll have a tendency to breathe a lot in the belly, but not very much in the upper chest. So you may have a big breath in the upper chest, big feeling there, or a minimal one. Okay, whatever it is, it's whatever it is. Some people who really restrict the breathing in the abdominals is they'll breathe more in the rib cage and the upper chest. So you may notice that you've a lot going on in the rib cage and upper chest, but not so much in the navel. Everybody has their own ways of doing things, yeah. So they're just noticing it. So, and notice, irregardless of the amount, notice that there's a little bit of movement in the navel. Notice that there's a little bit of movement in the rib cage, doesn't matter how much, and that there's a little bit of movement in your upper chest. Again, doesn't matter how much. It's just that you can experience all 3. You're getting a sense of it. And you're just allowing yourself just to observe. And it doesn't have to be fully on the breath. It's all right if there's other things going on in your mind. It's all right if there's other sensations in your body. That's absolutely fine. You can be having thoughts. You can be feeling sensations in your body. You can be in whatever mood you're in. At the same time, you can still have a little bit of awareness of, because it doesn't take much to just feel the breath move, and then just localizing it, recognizing where it is in the body. And generally, it's going to be somewhere in your navel, somewhere in your intercostal muscles, rib cage, and some in your upper chest. You're just observing. Now, if you wanted to heighten your awareness, of that, you do one thing. And before I actually do it, let's define what I mean by micro movements. So think about your index finger and your thumb apart by an inch. There's an inch between them, index finger and thumb. Now just do it in your mind's eye. Now what I want you to do is bring them half an inch closer. Now a quarter of an inch, just in your mind's eye. Now an eighth of an inch. Now a 16th of an inch. So your fingers now 32nd of an inch. You get what I'm trying to say, What's the smallest little space that you can have your index finger and your thumb so close but not touching? Okay. So what I mean by that is what I want you to do is slow your breathing down the smallest amount, like a micro movement. So you're not going to slow it down an inch, not even half an inch, not even quarter of an inch, not even an eighth of an inch. Slow it down a 16th of an inch, size-wise, just so you get a sense of it. So you're not trying to get in the way of your breath, you're just a willingness to slow it down slightly, but not interfere with the way your breath is naturally breathing. And sometimes it's like a dance. You'll notice it like a dance. Is that as you bring your awareness to it and you slow it down, is you'll find that the breath still flows in that natural momentum, and then sometimes you might find yourself slowing the breath down. So sometimes the breath leads the dance, and sometimes you lead the dance. That's okay. That's part of allowing your awareness to attune to the breath. And again, sometimes your awareness will flow with the breath, and sometimes the breath will flow with your awareness. Does that make sense? So that's okay. Allow that dance to happen. That's part of just attuning to the awareness of your breath. And it's the willingness to slow it down in micro movements. Now that's going to amplify the sensations. You're going to feel it more. You're not necessarily breathing much more, but you're going to feel the movement in your navel. Because it slows down, it gives you more time to feel it. So it's not that you're breathing more or deeper, but you're feeling the movement of it more. And then the same in the rib cage, and then the same in the upper chest. So it's just allowing you to amplify the sensation and the experience of your breath in your body, rather than change it, if that makes sense. And just let you then begin to recognize that there's a start of the breath, middle of the breath, and an end of the breath, on the inhale and the exhale. I'm going to leave out the pauses for now. We won't worry about the pauses, just let the pauses be for now. And it's an interesting one, because when you start to try and notice that there's the start, by the time you've said in your head there's the start, you're already in the middle. And by the time you said there's the middle, you're already at the end. So now, rather than saying it in your mind, is just notice it with awareness. So as the breath begins, you're just recognizing that's the beginning. You don't need to say it. You don't need to mentally say it. You recognize the middle and then the end. And then notice, is it easier for you to recognize the inhale or your exhale? Which one is easier? Which one does your awareness come to easier? And it'd be different for different people. Some people are going to say the inhale, other people are going to say the exhale. There's no right or wrong in that. It's just awareness. It's just recognizing which one it is. Now, is it easier to recognize start, middle, or the end of any breath. Is the start where you can go recognize it easier, the middle, or the end? Again, we're still just noticing, just becoming aware. And in that, you're already beginning to recognize the three phases of the breath. Breathing into the lower lungs and the navel, the middle lungs and the intercostals, and the upper lungs up towards the collarbones, the upper chest. Now, I've heard different schools of thought where some people will tell you breathe to the lower lungs. The breath naturally flows to the lower lungs and expands from there, and then it empties from the lower lungs all the way out. For me, that's the most natural way that I experience it. I have heard other schools of yoga where they'll fill the upper lungs first, and if they're breathing techniques, and then they'll fill the middle lungs, and then they'll go to the bottom, the lower lungs. But the shape of the lungs is very much like a vase. It's a container, so you fill the bottom up. That's always the way. So it naturally, that's the way it feels most natural. But it isn't always that way. And then the reason why I'm saying this is one person might notice that the beginning of their breath, they feel their navel. The beginning of the inhale and the exhale, you feel your navel expanding. For some people, may feel the upper chest expanding first. So if that's the case, that's okay too. That's breath awareness as well. You're just recognizing. And either way, the lungs are going to fill. So just recognizing, is the beginning of your breath in your navel, or do you sense it in your upper chest? The middle of your breath is always going to be the rib cage. And then the end of your breath, is it the navel, or is the end of the breath up in your upper chest? And again, it's just awareness. It's just recognizing which is which. Okay. And a nice way to then explore that as we go further into it. I think I've got a pranayama. I think I've got a 6-week course coming up pretty soon, where we'll do a whole 6 weeks on breath awareness. Yeah. And in that, one of the things we'll tease out is playing around with the different ways to breathe. And then looking at where is your most natural way. When you're breathing your natural breath, what way does your lungs naturally move? So we'll explore that as we go later. For now, it's just a simple practice of awareness. You're just observing. Notice the quality of your attention. That you're looking at and listening and feeling to a subtle experience. And that in that gentle slowing down of the breath, is that it actually heightens your awareness as much as the sensations in your breath. It actually heightens your awareness a little bit. Now, what you're doing there is you're beginning to tap into your life force. And you'll hear me talk about this on the sacral. Check out the 6-week beginner sacral session. I talk about the same thing, is that we talk about taking hold of our life force and beginning to activate it. So we go into that higher energetic state, that higher state of consciousness. It's just feeling all our senses heightened. This practice will do exactly the same thing for you. So notice how much it might give you a subtle sensation, but also a sense of clarity, a lovely clearness. You get a lovely calmness by just focusing on your breath and observing it. Okay? And again, notice how simple and basic that is. I'm not talking about a breathing technique. I'm talking about breath awareness, just becoming aware of your breath. Okay, so that's the difference, is just coming into that. So explore that, see how you go. Any questions people have along the way is bring them in, we chat about them. And you'll notice that there'll be different threads in our sessions, where as we delve more into the self-practice and what's on the mat and also what's off the mat, is you'll notice that there's different threads of conversation start to come out. So no doubt the philosophy is going to come in more, is the meditation is going to come in more, is the chakras will come in more, is the kundalini will come in more, is how do I live this off the mat will come in more. There's all these different threads that we're going to pull. How do I do this posture more? Is how do I do this one? How do I get my core power there? All the different aspects of the physical practice will also be very, very present in all the conversations. Okay, but for now, is gently open your eyes, bring yourself back. And then one moment together, let's just bring our hands together.